What are probiotics and why are they important to your health? We've all heard that we should take probiotics, and many of you watching probably are taking them now and have received benefit from them. But do you know why they're helpful and why you're taking them? Of course, you don't have to know these things to receive the benefit, but I think it's important to understand why they're necessary, because understanding that may help you understand why you have GI symptoms in the first place. I'm Dr. John Bartemus, and I'm putting the pieces together to help you live a life at optimal. Let's dig into your gut physiology so we can understand why probiotics are important. Let's first look at this drawing over here. Just to orient you, up here where the purple is, that is your gut lumen, or the space that the tube formed from your mouth to your anus. So we eat food, it goes in our mouth, down the tube, down through our stomach, into our GI tract. So this is our food and bacteria that we have consumed. It is not yet inside our body, it's technically outside our body because it's still in that tube, but it does have an impact on us. Then these cells are the cell lining of your GI tract. So if you've heard the term leaky gut happens when this barrier here, these cells have space between them or break down, and then things can pass through. This lining is leaky in leaky gut. Then underneath that lining is called the lamina propria, or basically the entrance to the rest of your body. But in the lamina propria, underneath that lining, is a bunch of immune cells, because just outside that single cell layer is the outside world. So it makes sense that we want to have a high representation of immune cells there to deal with anything that comes through. And this is why up to 80% of our immune system resides in our gut, because most of what's going to enter our bodies is going to enter through the GI tract. So this represents a resting GI state, or a homeostatic state, or a normal healthy state. In a normal healthy GI tract, we have sufficient amounts of good probiotics or beneficial bacteria in the lumen helping us. We have foods that we've consumed in there. We have the single epithelial lining layer keeping the outside separate from the inside, and then we have the immune cells. Now, the epithelium, or the cells making up your gut barrier, are constantly producing chemicals to communicate with the immune system. So they are sampling the foods that come down, they're sampling the bacteria there, and they're saying to the rest of the immune system, hey, it's good, we're safe, you can be calm and don't become inflamed, don't get overactive. At the same time that epithelial cells are doing that, we also have dendritic cells that are doing the same thing. You'll see this one has an arm here, it's like a periscope. It reaches up through the cells and it's just sampling foods and sampling bacteria, and then it brings it down and it says, hey, is this okay? Should I tolerate this, or is this something we should kill? If it's something that it tolerates, it releases tolerance signals and nobody over responds and we're good. If it's something we should kill, then it communicates with its other immune friends and says, hey, bad guys are here, clone out and go kill it. Okay? So this is a good, healthy gut as we want to see it. Now, why are probiotics important? Well, probiotics help influence our immune system and influence the gut environment to send signals of safety. Probiotics produce, especially lactic acid producing probiotics like lactobacillus that you see in almost all the probiotics on the market. Streptococcus species are lactic acid producers, and then bifidobacterium produce acetic acid or acetate, which is also a good signal or a way that it communicates to say, hey, let's tolerate, things are good. So if we have high levels of good bacteria like lactobacillus, bifidobacterium, streptococcus, and many other species, then the gut stays in its baseline resting state, not overreacting and tolerating things. This is good because it's anti-inflammatory and it promotes a healthy gut barrier so you don't have leaky gut, okay? Now, this is also important because you want to tolerate your food. You don't want to respond to food and have food sensitivities or food allergies. So in this state, those things are not happening, you're healthy, you don't have GI complaints, things are good. Now if we go over here to this state, this is a gut that has bad bugs and food reactions. So the bad bugs and food reactions are represented by brown and red up here. So let's start with an intact barrier. So it's the same as this drawing, except there's bad bugs in the gut. So if we have decreased good bugs, remember the good bugs or the probiotics were helping us create an anti-inflammatory environment and an environment of tolerance and non-reaction to foods and bugs. Now with a decrease in good bugs and an overgrowth in bad bugs, we have a pro-inflammatory environment, an environment that promotes immune reaction to bugs and to foods, and even may promote leaky gut. Let's walk through that. So we have the dendritic cell and we have the epithelial layer here still. The epithelium is, again, sampling and saying, hey, that's a food, hey, that's a bad bug. If it senses a bad bug, it's going to send signals to the immune system to clone out and go deal with it. The dendritic cell is also there with its periscope sampling foods and bugs, and it pulls it down in and says, hey, this is a bad bug. Let's, again, clone out and go get it. Okay? Well, here's where it gets interesting. With the lack of our good probiotics in this scenario, we don't have the lactobacillus or the bifidobacterium or the streptococcus in sufficient numbers to be producing enough of that lactic acid and acetate to be sending anti-inflammatory tolerogenic signals. So now when we're sampling things, we have more of a hair trigger, right? We're closer to being pro-inflammatory or to reacting and to saying we need to kill this. So let's look at it like this. You consume something that everyone on the planet would agree is healthy. Let's call it a strawberry. You consume a strawberry, it comes down the pipe. In this scenario, it's sampled, everyone tolerates it, you're good to go. In this scenario, it comes down the pipe, and because there's bad bacteria around, these immune cells are activated or more sensitive to responding. So if this dendritic cell samples a piece of the strawberry, but at the same time is activated by a bad bacteria, it's going to create physiology that results in a kill signal or a fear response. And so now, since it's been sensitized to a strawberry, now every time you eat a strawberry, you're reacting to it. And so the food sensitivity developed not necessarily because anything inherent in the strawberry was bad, but because the strawberry was presented in the same environment with bad bugs. Make sense? So the key there is, hey, we want to maintain good probiotic levels so that we don't develop food sensitivities. But if we develop food sensitivities, avoiding the food is not necessarily the cure. Avoiding the food is the Band-Aid, right? You're not dumping more trigger down the pipe. But ultimately what you need to do is clean up the gut in terms of decreasing immune reactivity, and you do that by improving or restoring your gut flora to healthy probiotics that are then saying, hey, chill out, tolerate, it's just a strawberry. The bad guys are gone, right? So that's one way that could trigger it. Another way that you could trigger it is, again, if you had leaky gut and now these things are coming in. Again, if things storm your castle, obviously that's going to be a pro-inflammatory trigger, and the immune system should appropriately respond to that because our barrier is now broken and bad guys are storming the castle. So that would be a leaky gut scenario. But what you need to understand is everything we said before this part is a pro-inflammatory, can drive GI symptoms even with an intact gut barrier. So leaky gut isn't the reason for every single GI symptom or every single GI disease. Leaky gut can be present and oftentimes develops in these if they go long term. But I want you to understand that GI symptoms and GI disease can develop in the absence of a leaky gut or with an intact intestinal barrier, excuse me. if you have dendritic cells sampling bad things and epithelial cells sampling bad things, you still get the pro-inflammatory immune reactivity in the absence of the leaky gut. So why are probiotics important? Probiotics are our allied forces. They are the Britain to our US in World War II. The US is our immune system, Britain are the allied forces or the probiotics. So probiotics are important because of the promotion of an anti-inflammatory or homeostatic baseline gut environment. They're important because they send tolerance signals, and then they're also important because they help produce short-chain fatty acids and vitamins and other things that nourish the colon, nourish this epithelial layer, and keep our barriers intact. So if you've been taking probiotics, good for you. You now understand more about why you're taking them and why you should take them and why they're helping you. If you're not taking probiotics because you thought it didn't have any science behind it and it's a money maker for people, well, there's tons of science behind it, and especially if you're having GI issues, you should consider probiotics and working with a practitioner that can help you restore your gut to normal health, restore your immune system to a tolerant baseline, and return your life to optimal.